Hello everyone. I thought we'd talk about layers today. You know, many years ago when I first started using Photoshop, it didn't have layers. And when the version that came out that introduced layers, I was ecstatic because I'd spent all this time trying to negotiate the composition of my work, and there was like one level of undo, and if you messed that up, you had to start all over. So when layers came along and you could adjust the position of these objects in your composition so easily, I was thrilled. So that's what we're going to focus on today. It's the bread and butter of Photoshop. Without layers, you got nothing. Well, I shouldn't say nothing, but it's really hard to use Photoshop without them. All right, so I got a question for you. What is this? You might be saying, oh, it's a plastic bag. Well, it's actually a magic bag. And we're going to take this object and make magic. Okay? So, let's take a look here in Photoshop. So what you're looking at there on the screen is a scan of a plastic bag. I made this scan many years ago, and it is just beautiful. And I want you to think about this as you're creating work. Like, look around for, humble objects that you can turn into magical textures in your work. So, layers. Let's start by duplicating a layer. Like, when you first open Photoshop up, down in the lower right corner of the interface is where you're going to find that layers panel. And right now, I got one layer. It's called the background layer, and it's got a lock symbol on it, and background layers by their very nature are like this. When you first open a photograph up, it's going to have a single background layer, and it's going to be locked. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this layer, and there are many ways that you can do it. One way is to click on it, drag it down here, and drop it over the new layer icon, and you get a layer called background copy, right? So I'm going to hit Command Z, your best friend, Command Z, to undo that last thing that I did. I'm going to show you another way to duplicate a layer. Or in fact, if you've made a selection, if you do this same shortcut, it will duplicate the selection to its own layer. In this case, I don't have anything selected, so it's going to duplicate the entire layer. So Command J is the shortcut to duplicate a layer, or a selection from a layer to its own layer. Like layer via copy is what that's called. All right, so cool. We got two of them now, right? And here's the eyeball, and it's like, you're not going to see any difference because they're exactly the same. It's an exact copy. Well, check this out. I'm going to go up here to the Edit menu and come down here to Transform, and I'm going to choose, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Now, what was on the right is on the left. What was on the left is on the right. And now if I poke the eye next to that layer, I can see I've got a reversed version of that original layer. Cool. Okay. So now let's take a look at some of the amazing things that are available to you in layers. If you look in the layers panel, we've got you can search for, if you've got a whole bunch of layers, you can search for particular kinds of layers. You've got opacity and transparency settings right here, and right next to that where it says normal, those are blending modes, which are fancy ways of blending, adjusting transparency. And so what we're going to do here is take our copied layer and change its blending mode. We've copied it and reversed it. Now watch this. I'm going to change the blending mode to lighten. Pretty cool, huh? Let's see. Oops. Accidentally selected. Didn't mean to do that. Let me get the move tool there. Okay, so I think you can see like what's going on here. Like I've reversed it and then changed the blending mode so that only the lighter pixels remain. And so what I get when you've mirrored an image like that, like flipped it, and you're only using certain pixels, you get this kind of symmetrical texture. It's really beautiful. And dude, I mean, we started with a plastic bag. You can't tell me that's not incredible. It's cool. Okay, so now 9 times out of 10, I'm going to tell you don't do what I'm about to show you, and that is merge layers down or flatten your image. You typically want to keep your layers intact so that you have flexibility. So what I'm going to do just to show you is merge these 2 layers down, because I want to apply a filter to them, and it's tougher to do that to multiple layers. It's possible, and we'll talk about strategies later, but for now what we're going to do is merge this layer down with the one beneath it. And the layers panel has a menu, right? In the upper right corner of the layers panel you see a menu, and most of the panels have that menu. And so I'm going to choose merge down. Now what's the shortcut for merge down? Command E, right? So if I wanted to, instead of choosing merge down or having to go up to that menu, I could just remember that shortcut. If I want to merge this layer down with the one beneath it, Command or Control E. Right? Command E on a Mac, Control E on a PC. All right, now I'm back to a single background layer, but it's smashed those 2 together. Right? And again, this is not necessarily the best way to go about things. You want to keep your layers intact if at all possible. All right, so now that I've merged them, I'm going to go up here to the filter menu. Filters, groovy mathematical ways that you can modify images. So I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, oops, and I'm going to do Radial Blur. All right, and so there are 2 kinds of blurs, like radial blurs. One is a spin, right? And one is a zoom, like this. So we're going to zoom this and bump up the amount to about somewhere around 15, 16. And for quality, I'm going to choose best, because only the very best radial blur will do for my discerning tastes. I'm going to click OK. And so now the whole thing looks like it's like you're going super fast. And by the way, that was Command plus to zoom in, Command minus to zoom out. See that? Or Control plus on a PC. I have to remember to say the PC controls, just to remind you guys. Anytime you hear me say Command, I'm talking Mac there. It's Control on a PC. Option on a Mac is Alt on a PC. All right, so we're getting our background looking pretty good here. I'm going to add a new kind of layer. Down here at the bottom of the Layers panel, I'm going to choose to add a hue saturation adjustment layer. There are all sorts of adjustment layers here, and what they are, it's an individual layer that allows you to modify the layers beneath it. In this case, the hue saturation adjusts color and the intensity of that color. All right, so anytime you create an adjustment layer, right above the Layers panel is the Properties panel, and for each adjustment layer you've got a set of options. And in this case, we've got mostly a black and white and gray image, and Photoshop doesn't recognize those as colors, so we're going to have to like force the color on it. If you'll notice, when I move the hue slider, there's some kind of bluish colors in our background that do change a bit, right? But I want to force that color over the entire image. So if it's black or white or gray, it's going to get some color. So down here in the Properties panel, when you've got a hue saturation adjustment, is the Colorize tick box. I'm going to turn that on, and now it's forcing color onto the entire image. And so let's see, I'm going to dial up blue 210, and I'll bump up the saturation to 50. All right, now I've got a more colorful, crazy textured wormhole kind of text, background texture. That'll set the scene for the rest of what we're going to do here. All right, so I'm going to open up another file here. This one's called locust.psd. I know it's not a they're called cicadas, right? But growing up, we always call them locusts. I don't know why. So I've got the Move tool. It's the very first tool at the top in the toolbox, right? Shortcut for that is V. Another shortcut for it is the Command or Control key on your keyboard. If you're ever using a different tool and you want to temporarily access the Move tool, you can hold down Command or Control. All right, so check this out. I'm gonna grab this locust, this cicada, and I'm going to drag him. Now watch, this is kind of important. If you're moving from one file into another, you see I've got these tabs up here. Each open file has a tab at the top. I can grab Mr. Locust here, and I'm going to drag him over to the tab for my magic bag. Now I haven't let go of the mouse button yet. This is important. You got to bring your cursor into the image first, and then drop it. Okay? In fact, I'm going to show you another trick. If, when you drag it up here and bring it in, if you hold the Shift key down before you let go, it puts it in the center for you. That's kind of nice. All right, so what's wrong here? Well, I've got this white background on the locust, right? I don't want that. That doesn't look good. So what I'm going to do is use a special tool for this. You may never use this too much, but just to point out to you, there are these different selection tools that isolate certain parts of the image so that you can work on them or cut them out, etc. One of them is the Magic Wand tool, right? And it's hiding behind the Object Selection and Quick Selection tools. The Magic Wand allows you to click on an area and it selects it according to its value or its color. So I've got all this white. If I click on that white, it automatically knows and selects those. Now, it's not always perfect. You've got to work at it. But in this case, it did a pretty good job of selecting that white background. All right, I'm going to deselect that. So check this out. If I go now to the eraser. Oh, where'd you go, Mr. Eraser? There you are. Right, you know what the eraser does. It erases stuff. Okay, and some of you, this has been your whole Photoshop career so far, is just to erase things, to cut them out. But hiding behind the eraser tool is the Magic Eraser, which is a combination of the eraser and the Magic Wand. So, and remember, there's a tolerance setting up here in the Control panel that you can modify. The lower the number, the fewer pixels it selects. The higher the number, the more pixels it selects. What I'm going to do is just bring it over to that white background and click. And voila, it's gone. Now, it's not always going to be this easy. Like, the reason it was that easy is because Uncle Byron already took that locust and cut it out and put it on a white background for you. The world is rarely that kind, but it is an object lesson. If you isolate the things that you're photographing and make sure that they have an easy to select background, your life is going to be a lot easier, right? So now, cool. Now in 2 steps, I'm going to take this bug, this ugly bug. Some of you might be thinking it's not ugly, but I'm going to take it from the grotesque to the sublime in a couple of steps in Photoshop. All right, so here we are back in our layers panel again. We've got our background layer, we've got our hue, saturation, adjustment layer providing the color, and layer 1 has the bug on it. In fact, I'm going to double click that and call it bug. Oops, there we go. Now I've got a layer called bug. I don't know, can you guys see that? Right. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is make him beautiful. So first thing is under the image menu, adjustments, and these are like the same thing as the adjustment layers, but it's a permanent change. It's not on a layer, it's changing the actual pixels. All right, so I'm going to invert that. What's a shortcut to invert? It's Command-I or Control-I on a PC. What that does is inverts colors, or black and white. Like black becomes white becomes black. All right, so now check this out. I'm going to change the blending mode. Remember blending modes? Right next to opacity, I can change the blending mode. In this case, I'm going to do screen, which is akin to lighten. So now I have this light, airy, beatific vision of a bug instead of that more grotesque one we encountered earlier. Total transformation, right? All right, so I'm going to take a break here. In part 2, we're going to duplicate some more layers, and we're going to add some modifications, maybe some text, and do some layer effects. All right, be right back.